is Ross from Tameside Media, and we're here with.
Masha Bennett.
So, Masha, we're in this lovely Aladdin's cave, have you, have you explained before. So, can you tell me what this is about, what you do here?
So, my Sand and Sound Centre, often known as Aladdin's Cave informally, this is a creative therapy centre. Many people, as they walk in, they think that I work with children. Whilst I do see some children, predominantly I work with adults. So, this is basically a playroom and a learning room for adults. It's just a lot more fun than the usual rooms you get for grown-ups.
Yeah,
So I specialize in things like sand play therapy. You might have seen some sand trays
yeah,
as you came in, and I don't know if you'll be taking pictures of the
yeah. I'll take
rest of
some
the
photos
space.
for so people can see.
So, so the sand tray, it's like a container where you can create a world of your own, like children do play in the
Yeah,
sand pit. So this is, again, largely for grown-ups. So it's like a three-dimensional form of art therapy. Another thing we do here is sound therapy, so sound bath, sound meditation. As you can see, I've got
yeah,
gongs and other instruments. We have a chanting circle, chants and mantras, very good for relaxation, clearing out busy minds. Um, a bit of a community, especially if people feeling shy or think, oh, I can't sing. This is for everybody. You don't need to be able to sing. There is no pressure to perform
yeah,
in any way. There is a variety of other things that I do. I train other therapists in various creative techniques. We do some intensive group therapy for trauma, quite regular weekends for that. Something called Besoboyden therapy, which is quite unusual and it's not very well known. And so basically, we also have low cost counselling. I've got a couple of lovely trainee counsellors on placement, and whilst they're accruing their hours, they're able to offer their services, and we don't charge very much for them, certainly not in comparison to private therapy. So there's a lot of things going on. We've got a ADHD support group. Actually, tomorrow evening, it's a
yeah.
fortnightly ADHD support group for women who've been diagnosed late, and I'm one of them. So, so it's helpful for me as well as for other attendees. So, and I'm always very open to people coming and using the space for something that's healing, something creative. Um, yeah. So if anybody's interested, they can come and check with me. The space may be available,
Yeah.
depending what it is and when.
It's quite interesting though because like there's a lot of different therapy sessions out there, groups and different, you know, mechanisms behind how to deal with certain things, and I think this is quite unique and stuff like that. So you could have gone down like the ordinary route and been like everyone else. Why did you want to be different? Why did you want to do what you do?
That's a really good question. And I was a sort of an ordinary talk therapist, even though I've always used various slightly unusual, slightly alternative approaches in my therapy. Um, the reason why I'm so passionate about using creativity and movement and color um, in therapy, because the part of our brain that deals with talking, um, it's the left hemisphere for most people, that's responsible for language and talking and understanding. That is not the part of the brain that requires healing. The right side of the brain, where often if we had experienced trauma or chronic stress or difficult events in our life, they tend to be stored. And obviously, I'm being very simplistic here. This is
Yeah,
not quite neuroscience works
yeah,
quite, but just to put it very simply, um, if we had really hard experiences that kind of stick with us, like maybe we get flashbacks or vivid recollections or really intense emotions, those experiences are not stored in the language part of the brain. They're stored in the right side of the brain, which is more intuitive, more emotional, um, more creative side of the brain. And for healing to take place and to be effective and safe, we need for both sides of the brain to work together, basically. And when we use any creative methods or any methods that use movement, somatic approaches, body approaches, we engage in both sides of the brain. So I personally found it, for me, much more effective. My own healing has been much more effective through creative methods like sand play, Boyden therapy, sound healing, than simply through talking. Because when I was in talk therapy, just through talking, I can very easily avoid touching into the difficult areas because
Mm,
we're kind of conditioned to, keep ourselves together and not show
yeah,
much emotion. And um, so the left side of the brain, the logical side of the brain, is very much prioritized by the schools, by society, because that sort of makes us human. We're able to organize and plan in the way that, say animals can't can't do.
yeah.
But also that means we've sort of detached and disconnected from the intuitive and emotional side of us, and we need both for the healing to take place.
Well, it's quite interesting that, and you know, I feel personally, if I was to go to a talking therapist, and I got told I had to go to one, and it's dull black and white, you don't really want to be sat in a black and white boring room. I'd rather come and sit in something like this. It looks really inviting. It looks warm. It looks cozy. There's a lot going on, and how my brain's wired, I'm like, oh my god, there's so much things to do in here. Like, I feel like a little kid. Do you know what I mean? As soon as I came in, it looks really, really inviting. Whereas, I've seen other rooms and it just looks, it's quite daunting for
Mm.
someone who's coming in for the first time and stuff like that, isn't it?
Mm. It can be, and I'm really glad you like this space.
I
Not
love
every,
it.
some people find it a little bit too much going on, but
Yeah.
most people really like it. Actually, a lot of the time when somebody walks in, they say, "Oh, I want to live here," and not just the kids, the
Yeah.
adults. um, and I've worked in the NHS for quite a few years, and
Mm,
certainly NHS therapy rooms tend to be very clinical, very dull, often very poor soundproofing, really not suitable for the job. I think private therapists usually try to make their rooms welcoming and warm.
yeah.
Um, but again, and a really skilled and empathic therapist can help the person reach those parts of our being where the difficult emotions are stored. But it's just a lot harder to do through simply talking than when you have a chance to put your hands in the sand, to pick up some objects from the shelves, to create your own world in the sand. When you hear the gong, I don't know if you ever had a gong bath, if you ever
I've
experienced
never
that.
I've never experienced it. I
Yeah.
I have come across people who do similar stuff to you, which will lead into my next question.
Hmm.
Now, what makes you different compared to the other people that do like these sound baths and stuff like that?
Okay, so most people who do sound baths are holistic practitioners, and some of them have
Okay.
got very good training. What's unusual about what I have to offer, and I actually invite my colleagues who are holistic practitioners to do most of the sound baths. I largely do one-to-one sessions rather than group sessions myself. I'm originally trained as a psychotherapist, um, and um, so I'm a mental health practitioner as well as using the sound.
Okay.
And many people are not aware of how powerful the sound is, because especially l- louder sounds, and I don't play very loudly myself, even very gentle sounds can be very powerful, but the gongs, because the sound kind of surrounds you. We can try it out later if you like. um, and it 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 does impact the body. So often people feel maybe quite emotional, or they feel interesting body sensations like tingling or energy moving, and they might have not experienced anything like that before, especially if people are quite split off their
Yeah.
their body, if they're largely in their head. And for some people, it can become quite overwhelming. Often it's a very beautiful and relaxing experience. And I know some people uh, for whom a gong bath is the only thing that helps them sleep if they have insomnia. And sometimes that's just the ticket. That's the only thing that works. But for other people, it can actually get really emotional and maybe even too much.
Yeah.
So that's why I actually teach trauma-informed practice courses for sound practitioners specifically, because I want them to understand how to deal with a situation where somebody in the gong bath, in the sound bath, might become overwhelmed or distressed. Because even with the best practitioners, it does happen just because the sound is so powerful. So, in answer to your question, what's different? I guess it's quite unusual to have a combination, this kind of combination of therapies. Um, and also, I wanted to mention the Pesoboyden therapy. It's a peculiar name. It's just named after the creators of this therapy, who were American dance teachers. They were choreographers, and they were teaching their students to dance. And they noticed that some of the students were really rigid and restricted when trying to perform certain moves, and they couldn't quite understand why, because they were perfectly able to do other things.
Yeah.
And what they realized is that for those people, there were various emotional blocks in the body. And over a period of time, they developed this therapy to help release some of those blocks. We don't do dancing here, and I'm not a dancer, but the therapy itself has developed into this very profound form of healing, where we use a bit of a psychodrama, so there is some role play where we can help people release different blocks and to address um, often kind of early childhood issues by creating a scene, like symbolic scene, for them to receive what they need. So, for example, if as a child I wasn't told enough or wasn't told at all, we love you by my parents, we can create a scene where that need would be fulfilled. And it is a role play, and we're not pretending that it's real, but the client can invite a person from the group to play a role of their, say, ideal mother or ideal father.
Mm.
And this ideal figure, who's not, we know it's not real,
Yeah.
but because it's symbolic, because there is a kind of a process around it, there's a healing ritual around it, our nervous system can receive it as real. So if we hear those words like "you are loved," or "I care for you," or "I'm here to support you," if that's something we were lacking in the past, we can symbolically receive it. So it's a very powerful therapy, and it's quite rare in this country. I'm one of about 11 accredited practitioners in the country. There's not many of us at all, so I'm very passionate about being able to offer this. It's not suitable for everybody, like with sound baths. For some people, it can get a bit too much.
Yeah.
So I guess a good thing about the center is that there is a variety of different approaches that at least one or two will be
Mm.
suitable for somebody.
There's quite a mixture now, quite a wide variety of things to do. You know, you're not
Yeah.
really restricted on, or it's just a sound bath, or it's just this, or it's just that. Which again, it's quite good. You know, as soon as I've walked in, I think it's quite unique. You know, I love the aesthetic of it all. It's bright and colourful. Um, so what would you say to someone who's watching right now, or maybe listening,
Mm,
and who's quite hesitant to,
mm.
wanting to do something like this? What would you say to them?
Yes, that's a really good question, because everybody's different and
Yeah.
everybody needs different things. At the moment, what I'm trying to do is to create a community of therapists, some of whom may work from this center and some of them elsewhere in the local area, but the therapists who have similar ethos, similar ways of working, like because I teach other therapists how to use sand play therapy, for example. There's quite a lot of my students in the area who also offer this this modality, because this is just one room and it's limited to what it can provide. So if anybody is looking for support and if creative therapy appeals, by all means get in touch with me at the Sand and Sound Centre. um, we do have two trainee counselors offering low cost therapy. I appreciate that kind of private therapy is not necessarily affordable.
Mm.
What I would love to do is to have more low cost services or free services. So maybe eventually getting some funding so that this work is more widely available. At the moment, um, for example, for Sandplay here, I can't take any more new clients because I'm full up. Um, the students will hopefully be able to. I think one of them is already trained in
Yeah.
using sand, and the other one will hopefully be soon trained in that. Um, so hopefully we'll have a good bunch of therapists offering this work. So in the meantime, in terms of what's accessible, we do have some spaces for low cost counselling. We have two gong baths a month, usually on Friday evening. There's one this coming Friday
Yeah.
with two lovely practitioners. One is Julie and one is Leonie. I do offer some private individual sessions. Some people prefer to try it out one to one because it's uh, maybe a little scary to go in with a group. Um, and one thing I would say, because I'm a trauma specialist, I do understand when people are scared of joining a new group or coming to a new place, and there's absolutely no expectation to do anything, perform, behave in a particular. Well, obviously, people need to behave in a respectful way. Like,
Yeah.
for example, during a gong bath, most people will lie down, but if somebody doesn't want to lie down, they can sit up. You know, if somebody needs to leave, they can leave.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody needs some support, they can ask for it. So, um, for example, also we have this ADHD support group, and people are welcome to join even if they're not formally diagnosed. So it's for late diagnosed women, also inclusive of trans and non-binary people as well. And some of our group members have had a diagnosis and some haven't, but they just know or guess
Yeah.
that they have ADHD. So, and it can be really scary for people to walk into the room of strange people. So, if anybody needs some extra hand holding or extra reassurance, we will offer that. If anybody is listening who is a mental health professional or therapist, if they want to get a bit of CPD, some training in creative therapies, they can have a look at my list of courses that I offer
Yeah.
quite a lot. So my kind of hope and vision is to support other mental health professionals and healing professionals in being safe and being trauma informed, and having a variety of tools so that they might not have my room, but they will have the capacity to offer these more creative somatic therapies. And we also have a regular therapist network meeting and support meeting.
Yeah.
So it used to be bi-monthly, now it's monthly. So and I'm sure I haven't met all the therapists in Tameside yet. So and especially being a therapist in a private practice and sometimes in an NHS as well, it's a lonely job because you're working on your own, you're seeing people who are distressed. And whilst all counselors, psychotherapists will be having some form of supervision, so some form of formal support, I think we also need informal support. So we
Yeah.
have a really relaxed, friendly monthly meeting for people to get together, ask each other for support, maybe bring their offerings. And also, we do a co working meeting where people can just be in company of each other and work on whatever their project is. So, they might be writing up materials for their website, or writing an article, or editing a video, or um, especially with um,
Podcasting.
podcasting. Yes, podcasting. So especially for neurodiverse people, it can be really hard to kind of stick to deadlines and work on your own. And I personally find body doubling really, really useful. Just working alongside somebody. We don't need to chat or do anything, but just having another friendly face in the room is really helpful. So we usually have like a smallish group between maybe 3 and 8 people just sitting here working on their own project. So this at the moment it's for therapists, but I'm also setting up like a writing retreat for people who want to come and just do some writing for uninterrupted slot of, I think it'll be 4 hours. So I'm scheduling that shortly because I write quite a few articles, and I need to edit some chapters for a book
Yeah.
as well. So and I find it so much easier in company. So for me, the important thing is to kind of keep growing, however slowly, um, creative healing community where people can feel comfortable to just come and be themselves and not have to be professional. Well, obviously we're professional,
Yeah.
but sometimes the kind of this umbrella of I have to be professional, it also feels like it strips people of their kind of being a normal human being. You might like the title of my podcast, which I started literally a few weeks ago. No tech skills. So I'm just basically recording a Zoom meeting like once a week. Um, my podcast is called the Flawed Therapist Podcast. Flawed, not as in lying on the floor, but kind of imperfect,
Yeah.
kind of imperfectly human therapist. Because I find a lot of my colleagues are under pressure to, people imagine that if you're a therapist or counselor, it means that you're perfectly in charge of your emotions, or all your relationships are sorted, and that you don't suffer like other people do, which is not true. We're
No,
just
it's
human.
far from being true
Yeah.
itself, because like what you just said then, we're human at the end of the day. All
Mm,
humans have
yeah.
emotions, and it's, if someone turns around and says, I've got no emotions, I don't feel anything, I don't have anything towards anyone, don't have relationship issues,
Mm.
clearly they're lying.
Well, or people are often unaware because we have a lot of good defenses to help us survive kind of typically our childhoods, whatever the pressures are put on by school and society. Um, Sometimes people are genuinely disconnected from their feelings, and even if they want to access them, they often can't. And that's where something like sand play can work really, really well, because sometimes people will pick um, a symbol or figure from a shelf and put it in the sand tray, and suddenly they're crying and they don't know why. They just picked a toy and put it in the sand.
So how does this sand tray work? Like, can you explain more about that, please? Because I'm quite like fascinated by it myself. I've never heard of
Uh-huh.
this sort of stuff before, so it's all new to
Okay.
myself.
So when we any creative therapy, like for example, it could be art therapy or clay therapy. So we have some images or figures external to ourselves. So for example, um, and we can try it later if you want. You can try to make a sand tray. Um, so I might be drawn to a figure of a bear on the shelf, and I pick the figure of a bear, and until I picked it, it's just a toy. It's just a
Yeah.
plastic toy sitting there. The moment I picked it, it's meaningful to me. And the logical side of my brain might think, well, I know what it means. The bear is, it's a kind of a motherly figure, it's a nurturing figure or protective figure. Also, I'm Russian originally. Sorry. It's not great to introduce myself as a Russian in recent years for obvious reasons. I've been here for 35 years now, but I'm thinking I'm looking at this bear, so it's stereotype Russian. Russians
Yeah,
are often connected to the bears, so that's my logical mind understanding what it means. But also there'll be a lot of hidden meanings in my emotional mind that I will not consciously understand because a lot of our memories are unconscious. So we might think our memory is like what you remember what you had for dinner,
yeah.
you remember maybe your first day at school, you remember other significant days in your life. But that's not all our memory is.
You've got your
Uh,
subconscious side of things as well, haven't you?
Most of our memory is so-called implicit.
Okay.
So, for example, you might hear a piece of music, or you might see a certain color, or you might arrive to a particular place and suddenly you feel a strong feeling and you don't know why. It is because there is an implicit memory, an unconscious memory, where this piece of music or the color or the place, it's matching your implicit memory. That's why often people feel, oh, this big feeling came out of the blue. And, I don't know why I lost the plot there. I don't know why I got angry, or I don't know why I got upset. It doesn't make sense. And that is why, because there will have been an implicit memory, unconscious memory, and that is science. It's not a kind of a new age woo woo. um, and the body memory of having experienced something similar. Especially things like smells are very, very powerful in taking us back to places. So you might not have a picture or words in your mind that will tell you, oh, it reminds me of that person, or it reminds me of that place, and that's why I'm reacting this way. So, because sometimes we don't remember consciously, sometimes it's very early memory, like before we're two, generally, we won't have those explicit memories. Um, and if you imagine, if you had to remember everything consciously, you'd be totally overwhelmed. You'd have
Yeah.
to remember every single tiny detail of this room. There are millions and millions pieces of information in this room. It's not possible to consciously register all of it. But
No.
unconsciously, as you're sitting here, your nervous system will register all this information, but it will just store it in the background until you might need it again. So I can't remember what the question was, but I was trying to. Oh, yes, how the sand play
Yeah.
works. So as we pick those toys, those symbols, those figures from the shelf, they carry all that potential meaning. And as we put them in the sand tray, and sometimes people feel they just kind of dumping things randomly in the sand tray. And then as they start looking at this world they've created, they start making connections, and those implicit thoughts, feelings, memories become more explicit. Then they say, oh, I can see that this is about my relationship, or I can see this is about my family, or this is about, I don't know, my dog, or whatever. So what wasn't obvious becomes more obvious. And even if it doesn't, sometimes people make a soundtrack and say, I have no idea what this is, this feels daft.
Yeah.
Um, but it might be days, weeks, or months later that they have some kind of insight or realization. So, so largely it is quite an unconscious therapy, and you need to, in order to kind of go for it, you need to be quite kind of curious and playful, because at first it might not make sense,
Sense. Yeah.
but you will probably begin to feel it even if you don't know what it is that you're feeling. So gradually, all those emotions that have been not processed. So, so just to talk about the emotions, there's nothing wrong with any emotion, including sadness, grief, anger, fear. They're all normal human emotions.
Yeah.
But because of how kind of a Western society works, um, often people disapprove of certain types of emotions. So in certain families, for example, anger may not be welcome, it might not be allowed, or it might be punishable.
Yeah.
Or if a child is scared, somebody might laugh at them and ridicule them. Or if somebody is really sad, they may be seen as weak. And so we gradually learn to shut down those emotions that don't seem to be acceptable. But they're not going anywhere. They stay in the nervous system, they stay in our body. So that's one of the reasons when in any form of therapy, but I find especially in creative therapy and body therapy, somatic therapy, people will often start feeling because the therapy accesses those places. And in the ideal world, it needs to be quite gentle. I don't want to be uh, getting somebody really distressed. But creative therapists tend to work very gradually and gently
Mm.
so that those emotions can gradually be released. And as those memories come come up, and they can be conscious memories or unconscious memories, just feelings, sensations. If you are in a safe place, like if you feel safe enough here with and the therapist is a safe enough person, those memories or those old records, they get transformed so that even if you feel sad or you might feel scared, because you're in a safe enough place with a person who is not judging you and not saying you shouldn't be feeling this, it's almost like those memories get restructured. It's called memory reconsolidation, so that whatever those old events or situations were, they're not going to be remembered in the same way. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and it doesn't matter what you do to achieve that. So I like playing in the sand. So it's almost like it doesn't matter which form of transport you take to get from Manchester Piccadilly to Glossop, where I live. Well, it does matter because
Yeah.
if you drive, you're going to get stuck in the traffic jam. But you can take a train, you can probably take a bus, you can
Yeah.
take an Uber, you can drive. So there is different routes to the same place. So some people love talking therapy, it helps them express themselves verbally. They can be heard and understood, and that works really well. Some people have no words or have few words to describe their experience, and they much prefer non-verbal or little verbal therapies, like playing in the sand can be really, really good for many people. It will, by different route, but achieve similar objectives. Sound therapy, it's a holistic therapy rather than like a mental health intervention. But for some people, it's very, very good for releasing stuck emotions, and some people have significant positive mental health shifts because of that. And for others, it might be totally unsuitable. So everybody is very different, and everybody prefers, they might not know it, but they will have a preference for particular type of healing ritual. And
Mm.
that could be shamanic drumming. We've got a few shamanic drums here. For some people, it could be like a shamanic ritual. For some people, it might be whatever their spiritual beliefs are. They might go to church or temple or mosque or whatever, and so they might find those experiences very healing. For
Mm.
somebody, it might be going for a walk in the forest with your dog. Um, that it doesn't have to be a formal therapy scenario.
Yeah.
Certain things will be healing and releasing for us. Um, but I'm very fortunate to actually be paid for the stuff that I do, which I love
Yeah.
doing. I love working with the sand. I love working with sound. I
I think
love
that makes a
working with
difference
people.
as well, to be honest with you, because some people just do it for a paycheck, don't they?
Yeah. Mm,
And, when people do it for a paycheck, they're not really that interested in
mm,
doing what they're doing, and it's just all they see is money. Whereas people like yourself, you enjoy doing it, you love doing
mm,
it, and you will put that 110% effort into it, whereas someone who just does it for a paycheck may just
mm.
put 50% effort into it.
Possibly. I find most counselors, psychotherapists, are quite dedicated and love
Yeah.
their work. However, some may get into this work for different reasons. Like most of us get into this work because we've got our own healing to do.
Yeah.
We come across a certain therapy and think, oh, this is really good for me. Maybe I should train as a therapist so that I could help other people. So it's almost sometimes a way of avoiding our own healing. I think some of us do that.
Yeah.
I certainly have done that in the past. Um, and also for some people, it can be a little bit of a power kick
Yeah.
because as a therapist, you have some power and some authority. And people don't like talking about this, but it does happen that, and some therapists will abuse their position of trust. It doesn't happen that often, but it does happen. So I think it's important to name that. So yes, people hopefully love their job, and hopefully they're safe and ethical with it. Unfortunately, it doesn't. We know it doesn't happen always in the NHS.
Yeah.
We've seen doctors and surgeons prosecuted for bad abusive practices. It happens among therapists as well. Um, but yes, I think being able to love what you do and getting paid for it, it's a dream. It's a dream job.
There's something as well what you mentioned earlier on, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you mentioned about the non-binary trans people. It's all is was that you saying that you include them,
Yes, yes.
which I think is quite good as well because it's hard to find places like this where everyone's included.
Mm,
They don't exclude anyone.
yeah,
There's no
yeah,
discrimination on, you know, race, religion, what you identify as. I feel like that in itself is quite unique. The fact that you welcome anyone and everyone,
mm,
regardless of whatever they are.
yeah.
Do you know what
No,
I mean?
absolutely. That is really important. And whilst I strive to be kind of inclusive and non-discriminatory, I think what's useful to remember that all of us have capacity to discriminate, and unconsciously we do discriminate.
Yeah,
Because just because the way we're brought up
yeah,
and the way society operates. So I have to watch myself, and it's a really important part of the work that I don't, uh, well, certainly not consciously discriminating, but I need to notice when I might sometimes unconsciously discriminate against
yeah,
people. So that's important part of practice for every therapist, because unconscious bias, it exists, um, and we can't get rid of it completely, but we can monitor it to make sure that we don't behave in discriminatory
yeah.
ways. So definitely everybody is welcome. Obviously, people need to behave in a safe
Yeah, no,
enough and respectful
that's
enough way.
understandable. Yeah,
Yeah, but otherwise, absolutely. Um, and just to mention, the center it's not a drop-in, apart from when there is like a drop-in session, for example, like a ADHD group, because I do get some help, but largely kind of I'm the one who is here most of the time, but most of the time I'll be either teaching or seeing clients, or in a meeting. So if people do want to pop in and have a look around, they're very welcome. But if they can just get in touch with me by email, ideally. I'm a bit phobic of talking on the phone, so I don't like talking on the phone. So email is best. Uh,
that's gonna lead me into my next question as well. So for anyone watching or anyone listening, where are you based? And secondly, what days do you do certain things on? As well,
okay.
Monday, Tuesdays, and
So, so we're based in Hyde. In There is an office building called Digital House, and there's a couple of normal offices here, and there's my Aladdin's Cave. It doesn't. It just looks like a normal office block from outside, but when you walk into inside, it's altogether different. So just opposite Morrison's, opposite KFC, so just a few minutes away from the bus station and the town centre. And in terms of different activities, because we do a lot and it varies.
yeah,
I'll mention the regular things that tend to happen on the same day. So at the moment, our low cost counselling is available largely on Tuesdays, but we'll have a Thursday morning slot available from September as
okay,
well. We have two lovely trainee counselors, Sam and Jade. So um, they've achieved the level of training where they're safe and sound to work with people, but they need to accrue their practice hours for their full qualifications. Um, so our ADHD support group tends to meet on Thursday evenings, usually fortnightly. In August, we'll just have one meeting because of the holiday season, but otherwise, it's fortnightly. Our gong baths tend to be on second and last Friday of the month in the evenings. There's a variety of courses and other events. They vary. But if people look it up on the website or sandsoundcentre.co.uk, or if they follow me on Facebook. In fact, my Facebook profile is probably more up to date than the website because I tend to post quite regularly. So I'm Masha Bennett on Facebook. It's a professional profile. We have a page for the Sand and Sound Centre. It's called Masha's Sand and Sound Centre, but I don't update it as often. So my main professional profile page is uh, much more up to date. So some things are fairly regular, some things are just a one-off. Some of my colleagues come in and offer workshops for other therapists, for general public. What I usually do is have a monthly newsletter, which is part of my blog. So we're just coming up to August. I'll be writing a new one, which has a full up-to-date list of events, and people can subscribe to my blog um, on the website, and then they will receive a monthly update of what's on, and they'll have the dates. And people are very welcome to email me or send me a message on Facebook. That I'm very happy to hear from people. I'm not always 100% organized with replying promptly, partly because of my ADHD difficulties. But I do my very best, and I do have some support. I do have two lovely assistants, one of whom helps me with some admin, and one of them helps me actually here in this room just to like to tidy up or set up the room for various groups and events. I'm getting better at asking for help myself, and I encourage other people to do the same.
That's fantastic. So just before I let you go, is there a message you'd like to give to anyone who's watching or listening?
Hmm. I guess my main message is um, healing is a lifetime job. That's what I have learned.
Yeah,
I think I'm doing okay, but I know I will be um, healing, supporting myself, working on being myself for the rest of my life. And the main thing I've learned in this time that is that being myself is the most important thing that there is. So for me, a healing journey is a journey of allowing myself to be as fully myself as possible.
yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah,
Most of us are wearing a mask for good
yeah,
reasons. We have to wear a mask in order to fit in to families, school, society, workplace, whatever.
mm,
It's necessary. However, the journey of becoming yourself is the most important journey of all, I think. And I personally love creative ways of doing it, whether people enjoy art or enjoy building sandcastles or write poetry. I would very much recommend any form of creativity um, in that on that journey of finding yourself. So that would be my main message.
all right. Well, thank you for your time anyway, and it was nice
Thank you,
meeting you.
Ross.
Thanks.
Lovely to meet you too.
Stop that.